Welcome back to Full Circle, Florida. Self-examination is hard. It usually means admitting you were wrong or at least ill-informed. In politics, the losing party often has to go off into the woods, so to speak, to figure out who they really are and how they can reemerge stronger, smarter, and most of all, relevant. Forrest Saunders this week on the first steps of the long road to redemption for the Florida Democrats.
There's no easy way to say it. It was a bad night for Democrats on election night. Not only did Donald Trump win his home state by about 13 points, a historic victory for him, the Republicans were also able to keep their Senate seat, their House seats. They also were able to keep their supermajorities in the legislature, not to mention flipping Miami-Dade County for the first time since the 80s. So what happened?
Election night was a disaster for Florida Democrats up and down the ballot.
The 47th president of the United States.
And Republicans are relishing it.
I think Nikki Fried obviously changed her logo to a panther in the middle of this, and I think that's a metaphor for where they are. I don't see a path forward for Democrats in Florida for a period of time.
Angry Democrats are now sounding off online. The former head of the Florida Harris campaign, Jasmine Bernie Clark, said the state was, quote, never in play, and we all knew it, further complaining about little to no funding and saying, quote, the Florida Democratic Party failed because they didn't take Florida voters seriously either. Fix your expletive. Miami Democrat Billy Corbin went further, saying in an open letter he was leaving the party and called for the resignation of State Chair Nikki Fried and Miami-Dade County Chair Chevron Jones. Quote, if you have a modicum of pride or shame after last week's electoral bloodbath, you will resign from your positions as well.
Us pointing fingers or pointing blame on who fault it was a national upset. This wasn't a state or a local thing. This was a national upset that we had with the Democratic Party.
Jones told us he's leaving in December, but it was always the plan, given that he's a state senator. In an op-ed for MSNBC, the lawmaker lamented that Dems missed on messaging, specifically the economy.
I think that we have to admit the fact that when people voted, people wanted to vote with their wallets and their pocketbooks, and that's what they did.
For Democratic strategist Steve Schale, the loss was a culmination of issues that had been building for 8 to 10 years: crumbling party infrastructure, weak voter registration, and writing off parts of the state that used to be competitive.
My party keeps looking for the silver bullet, and there is no silver bullet. You know, Republican operative buddy of mine, Kevin Sweeney, often says the secret is there is no secret. It's just hard work. And we have huge swaths of this state that our party is completely irrelevant in.
His advice: go back to the basics. No magic slogans, just voter registration, quality candidates, and organizing for the next election.
All right, let's bring in ABC Action News political analyst Dr. Susan MacManus, and let's talk about the growing Florida connection in the White House, and it seems to be growing by the day. From Trump himself, of course, who now lives, or his residency is in Florida, to Marco Rubio, picked for Secretary of State this week, Mike Waltz, National Security Advisor, Congressman from Florida, Matt Gaetz, Attorney General, Congressman in the Panhandle, although he did resign, and then Susie Wiles, Trump's Chief of Staff. What does this reveal about the Sunshine State's growing role in the corridors of power?
Absolutely. All you have to look at are several things. Number one, just in October of 2021, the Democrats were still more of them than Republicans in registration. 3 years later, the Republicans have a million-plus edge. And secondly, you know, we're used to having just a couple elections ago, Florida was deep purple with every statewide race being, you know, won by 0.5% to 1%. And all of a sudden, 2 elections in a row, Republicans are winning by double digits. And also, Florida, the fact that the president lives here, the to-be president lives here, he is very familiar with, you know, tapping into why they won and the people here,
right.
But also not just elected officials, but also some of the experts. And I think that all of this together says that all of Republican land is looking at how did Florida do this, the third largest state.
Yeah, because you're not talking about Texas with that kind of influence within the White House. You're talking about Florida, and I'm just wondering, does that translate to any kind of political currency for the state itself?
Well, certainly it does, because one of the things that happened that made Florida different was the diversity and the in and out migration, but in migration of people from all over, not just Northeast rich Republicans, but people from the Caribbean, South America, all over the country.
Melting pot. Yeah.
So we were much more diverse than Texas, and when you look at this election results, the Republicans made inroads with a lot of these groups that heretofore they had not done well at all.
Let's talk about the Matt Gaetz situation. Do you think he's going to be confirmed as Attorney General in spite of him being under investigation for human trafficking? He was not charged. He's also facing the House ethics investigations, although he resigned, so that investigation is now over in effect. But do you think he'll get past the 50 mark?
That was a lightning bolt that hit Washington, and everybody was totally shocked by it. We don't know, but one thing we do know that's a short-term win for Republicans is the fact that since he resigned from the House, he is no longer able to create what many of them called chaos. He took down Kevin McCarthy.
Right.
So he's out of that, which gives this newer Speaker, Johnson, a little bit more room to move.
So they're happy to see him go.
Yes, but in terms of his confirmation, I think that's up in the air right now.
Florida almost added another name to the list of influential members, Rick Scott, but he lost his bid to be Senate Majority Leader, which he was really pushing for very publicly. Why do you think he fell short?
Couple of reasons. First of all, the Senate is a sort of a club. Those people serve for 6 years, House members too. They know each other. There's a lot of collegiality and trust. He was sort of the outsider of the bunch, the newer member of the three that was competing. And secondly, it was very telling that Trump himself did not endorse Scott. Trump had made peace with Thune, who's already number 2, and he now was winner. Over the summer, they sort of mended fences, and Scott was just kind of the third party out. And one more thing, Thune is the younger by far of the three that were in contention.
It is interesting that, people can be on different pages with Trump at times. And it seems like, at least maybe this time around, he's been more willing to extend the olive branch or make up. I mean, you've seen it with J.D. Vance, you've seen it with Marco Rubio, and then Thune, as you pointed out. Many people may not be aware of Susie Wiles, but she's a legend in Florida politics. Some say she made Ron DeSantis, and then they had some sort of falling out. DeSantis reportedly tried to get her fired from Trump's 2020 campaign, and then she got a revenge dismantling DeSantis' campaign when he ran for president. So who is Susie Wiles?
She is the utmost political campaign manager in the state. Long a reputation. She helped Rick Scott win his first race. What she has a reputation for is running a tight ship. And not letting people get too close to the candidate that aren't going to be helpful. But she has an even better reputation for building a staff where there's tremendous collegiality, and she has also a reputation for not wanting the limelight, let the staff and others get all the credit. And this time out, very importantly, she was part of the plan that the Republicans used, that they were going to focus on low propensity people who don't often vote. Very successfully they did that.
What do you think is different this time around with Trump?
Well, different times, different mood of the public.
Yeah.
His experience obviously is different. The mood of the country, frankly, was quite different. All of a sudden people were saying the nation's headed in the wrong direction repeatedly. He represented change, and I think what you see in a lot of what we look at data-wise, a lot of people didn't like his persona necessarily, but they really liked his policy.
I wonder if they're getting used to that at this point. I thought this was really interesting this week. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, very well known. Some would say far left congresswoman from New York. She apparently got some research that indicated people voted for both her and Trump in her district. She went on social media and asked them sincerely, how can you vote for me and vote for him at the same time? And she genuinely wanted to know what the difference was. What do you make of that? Because I would imagine that pattern probably played out in other places in America too.
Oh, absolutely. You saw a lot of states where people voted for a Democratic member of the U.S. Senate, but they voted for Trump. So the split ticket voting wasn't unique. What was unique is her actually taking the time to find out why people were voting like they were. A couple things, but I thought one of the more interesting findings was that people who voted for Trump and her said, well, look, both of you are non-establishment. You're upset. You upset the apple cart. You're outsiders.
Yeah. So there you go. We have common ground between two polar opposite political figures. Go figure. All right, Susan, thank you. Hang with me real quick. Our final thoughts on the busy week of news next.